Today on the No City on the Sideline Dad podcast, what if the anxiety you feel in a meeting, even just walking to a crowded room, what if it all traced back not to who you are, but who you were as a kid? We're talking about bullying, not just in the playground, but the kind that sticks to your ribs and rides shotgun in adulthood. My guest today, Patricia Stahl, who has spent more than 40 years as a therapist helping people deal with social anxiety. And over, it goes back to one thing. They were bullied. We get into what really makes a bully tick, how parents can step in without making things worse, and the story how Patricia helps her son stand up to a bully with nothing but a quarter. Yeah, a quarter. So if you ever felt powerless watching your kids struggle, or if your own childhood still echoes back in the way you don't always talk about, stick around. This episode for you. Next on the podcast. Let's do this.
Welcome to the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast, a podcast about a journey of discovery and conversations about not sitting on the sideline of life. Let's get involved. Here's host Joe Foley.
Hey there, I'm Joe Foley, and this is the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast. This is a show about real conversation, parenthood, mental health showing up when it's hard. The messy, meaningful stuff that makes us a better dad and a better human. And today we're going to dig into bullying, not just about the obvious kind, the kind that leaves bruises on your ribs or in your insides, that turns into silent shame, second guessing, in everything you say or do. Yeah, I felt it too. Now, quick heads up. This conversation with Patricia was recorded a few years ago, but trust me, it still matters. In fact, maybe it matters more now than ever. Let's get into the conversation. Here's my conversation with Patricia Stahl. Welcome to the podcast, Patricia.
Thanks, Joe. I'm happy to be here.
Thank you much for being on the podcast, and I really do appreciate it. There's something to talk about tonight, and it's a big deal. It means when we talk about bullying, bullying can be very detrimental to a kid, obviously, but also carry through to an adult. How did you get into this kind of topic and this topic about this stuff?
It came from two directions, really. First of all, I'm a therapist, and I've been working with adults for 40 years, and a lot of them with social anxiety. And I started seeing the connection between bullying as a kid and being socially anxious as an adult. A lot of my social anxiety clients were bullied as a kid, and those repercussions last for a long time. You don't just get over bullying when you get out of school. So there was that. And then my son was bullied when he was in, I guess it was 5th grade, by a bigger kid. So it's really tough for parents when that happens. I hope your son hasn't been bullied, but we don't really know what to do. And you see how painful it is and you feel powerless. So those two reasons, I think, I became interested in the topic.
How did your son do? I'm kind of curious. As a parent, I'd be kind of aggravated and frustrated. I mean, trying to help your kid go through the situation of bullying. You said your son was bullying. What was his experience like?
His experience, I'll tell you, I feel responsible because he was smaller than the other kids in his class. And these kids used to carry these backpacks with these heavy books. And I always felt like they were too much for him. So I got him a rolling backpack. That was the kiss of death for him at his school. So this one big kid, we'll call him Buck, used to kick the backpack into the woods and call my son a loser. Okay. So would you like to hear what I did about it?
Oh, yeah. Okay. How did you handle that?
I did something kind of weird. It just kind of came to me one day. I told my son that I would give him a quarter every time Buck called him a loser, and for him to go to school and tell Buck that he was going to get paid when he did it. So my son looked at me like I was crazy, of course, and then he didn't do anything about it. But a couple of days later, he came in and he said, "I just need a quarter." And I said, "Whoa, 1 quarter? Why just one?" He said, "I told Buck to call me a loser." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Just call me a loser." And he said, "Why?" And I said, "Call me a loser because my mom's going to give me some money every time you do." So what did Buck say? No, I'm not going to call you a loser. He wouldn't do it. And then later that afternoon, Buck wanted to borrow a pencil from my son. And my son said, only if you'll call me a loser. And Buck refused. So he didn't get his pencil. And my son never got bullied again.
That's interesting too, because that's a funny story. But hey, you're trying to beat the bully at this game. Hey, I'm getting paid for you to call me a loser. It's an interesting way of dealing with it.
Yes, exactly. Once the bully knows that it's not going to hurt you in any way, you're not going to get frightened or angry or any of those things, start to cry, but if want it to happen in a sense, or at least don't mind it at all, then it takes the fun out of it for them. Then they want to go find somebody who reacts, because the reaction is what they're looking for.
I'm interesting too, because how does a kid become a bully? Because I find it interesting. Is it because of their upbringing, or is something wrong with them? Why do they become a bully?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything wrong with them. One thing I do list in my book about 10 different reasons. Oftentimes, they have seen somebody in their family be bullied, maybe a mother by a father or vice versa. They have been bullied by someone. They're very interesting. They can be very popular, and they're trying to maintain their popularity. So they try to be funny so that the other kids will laugh. They may feel insecure. They may feel jealous. They may be just depressed. An interesting thing happened with me recently. I had a client come in, and she told me that she had been bullied by this boy in school. And he recently, I guess she ran into him. I was going to say he contacted her, but she ran into him. And he apologized for bullying her back then and said the reason that he did it was because he had a crush on her and he didn't know how to express that. So he teased her and bullied her instead. So there are all kinds of reasons.
It's just interesting too. It's almost like I found this interesting word. I'm not sure if it really fits into what we're talking about, but when you talk about bullying in school, trying to be Mr. Popular, trying to make sure you maintain dominance. But I found it just interesting word, rankism. I thought that was pretty interesting. It's abusive discrimination or exploit behavior towards people because they want to make sure I'm not sure if I'm using the word correctly, but I feel you want to gain dominance and make sure you're the top dog.
Exactly. It's power and control. And that's why if the victim doesn't react the way you want them to, then you don't feel so powerful. And so you walk away. I think the name of your podcast is so great when it comes to bullying, because one thing you don't want dads to do is sit on the sidelines when their kids are being bullied. So many of the celebrities that I wrote about in my book talk about how important it is that these kids tell someone, and they talk about how helpful their parents were in different ways. You want to help your child not react emotionally. Okay. So inside they're going to react. They're going to be sad. They're going to be scared. They're going to be angry. But if they don't show that, again, that will make the bully less interested in bullying them. So there's one technique, an assertiveness technique called fogging, that I think is really helpful. And parents can role play this with their kids to help them get to the point where they can do it comfortably. But I'll give you an example. If someone says to you, "You're so tall, you look like a giraffe."
Mm-hmm.
What you do is you agree with the part that is true, but not the critical part. So your response would be, "Yes, I'm tall." But so there are two parts. You can agree with the part that's true, and also you want to project an attitude of, "So what? I'm okay with myself being tall. You're not going to get to me by criticizing my height, because I'm okay with that." So you look the bully straight in the eye, you stand up straight, you talk loud, and then it takes the fun out of it for the bully, takes the wind out of their sails, and they stop.
Trust me, saying that too. It has to be very difficult because when you're being bullied, your self-esteem, your confidence is very low. To stand up to a bully, to look him straight in the eye and tell him, "So what? I am tall. What does it matter to you?" and walk away. That takes a lot of confidence. And so I think sometimes people who are being bullied don't have that confidence.
Oh, you're so right. That's why I suggest role playing, and to role play with your child until they can pretend as well as they need to. It is pretending. That comedian, James Corden.
Yes.
What is it? Riding in the car with
All the
I don't,
celebrities. It's a late
yeah,
show, one of the late shows.
yeah, exactly. He said something I thought was really well said. He said, confidence is kryptonite to bullies. So if you help your child at least pretend, fake it till they make it, pretend to be confident, the bully loses all his interest. So yes, you're absolutely right. And that's what you're trying to do with your kid is to help mitigate the shame of being bullied. Because shame is the worst part of all. And that's what this book is about, because I'm trying to help these kids see that their heroes were bullied. And if their heroes were bullied, then that helps them feel a lot less shame about the fact that they're being bullied.
It's interesting too about being bullied all the time and stuff like that. Is that do they develop some kind of like avoidance problems? Do like to cover like fear of being like lose self confidence is ruined? You don't want to deal with the bully, so you're like, oh, mom, I'm sick. I don't want to go to school and stuff like that.
Absolutely. School avoidance, lowered self-esteem, lowered grades, physical problems, headaches, stomach ache, anxiety, depression, of course, eventually possibly rage. 70 something percent of school shooters were bullied, suicidal thoughts, and sometimes actual suicide. There are so many repercussions. You're absolutely right. And you grow up, it's hard to regain that confidence or gain it if you've never had it.
Well, it's interesting too, from a person who's been abused, I've been bullied pretty much my whole life and stuff, and overcoming it and stuff like that. Yeah, there's been times when I was being bullied. I remember one, I'm like, quick story was when I was in high school, my sophomore year in high school.
Mhm.
And there's one kid who just would not, he was relentless. Every day I saw him, he was on me about everything, anything he can think of. Until the final, the last day of sophomore year, I took my book and we were in class, a heavy book, and I flung it at him. And I had enough. I flung it at him, hit him in the chest, got him in a headlock, and almost you could say I was choking him. And I was the only day I've ever been in in-house suspension was the last day of school, but I had enough of him. I only could take it for so long. And I remember the teacher going, I don't want to do this. I know I have to do this. I go, don't worry about it. Just give it to me. I understand. I'll go in house. I'll take my responsibility. I'll go up to the office. But kids can't take that every day because they don't need that pressure. School's hard enough.
Exactly. Exactly. And that's why you see the increased rate of suicide and school shooting, because they get to the point where they just can't take it anymore.
Another thing too is, do you think bullying happens at home too?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Again, I think that's one of the common reasons why bullies become bullies is because they've been bullied. Like, for instance, what just popped into my head, one of the people that I write about in the book is Tyra Banks, the model. And she said that she was bullied so badly by her older brother at home that she would go to school and she became a bully and she would bully all the other kids. And then it turned around and she started being bullied by kids in school. But for sure, if you've been bullied, you want to gain some power in some way. You feel disempowered when you're being bullied. Definitely can lead to you're becoming a bully.
Does this have a long-term effect on kids as they become adults?
For sure. A lot of the same repercussions that kids experience, certainly the shame, the anxiety, the depression, the lowered self-esteem. But I see a lot of people with social anxiety, as I said. And you were talking about avoidance is huge with social anxiety. Why would they want to put themselves in a situation where somebody might find them lacking in some way? So they do avoid. They don't want to go to parties. They don't want to go around any new people. Some of them don't even want to be around their friends in case they somehow mess up and people don't like them anymore.
I was thinking too, he says social anxiety, they don't want to put themselves in a position to look stupid or
Yep.
make it look silly, like I don't really belong here. And is that always true though? Because sometimes people are just, it's in their head.
Is it true that?
Is it true that what they believe is, say that I don't belong in this place. I don't want to look stupid. I don't want to think that I'm who they think I am. Put themselves in position so they avoid the party, avoid doing something they really want to do because they don't want to look stupid, even though that may not be true.
Oh, for sure. The funny thing is that when I do a lot of groups with social anxiety, And people are always so surprised at how comfortable everybody else looks and how they'll always say, oh, he's a stooge, isn't he? You just put him in here to make us feel better or whatever. People with social anxiety are so concerned about how other people see them that they are very unlikely to do anything that would attract that kind of attention. And one other thing you asked about the repercussions as an adult, becoming people pleasers. If you're afraid that people aren't going to like you, that your relationships are tenuous, then you tend to do whatever anybody else wants to make sure that they stick around. So that's pretty sad as well.
I think about that too. Also in parenting, parents, like you had a parent that maybe he or she, mom or dad, were bullying to you. So always want to please them. So they'll say, hey, I love you. I think that is sort of bullying. Do you think that carries over into like personal relationships too as when you get older?
For sure, for sure. The people pleasing starts back then in a lot of cases. That's right. If their parent acts like they're very judgmental if your parent is really judgmental or critical, then you're going to work really hard to try to be exactly what they want so that you don't get criticized.
Do you think they, like I said, carried over to personal relationships too? You've seen more of that too, as an adult?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, it impacts everything. People who have been bullied don't trust other people, basically, in a lot of cases. And so they can't get close to other people. They're always assuming that the person is going to reject them at some point or abandon them because there's something not good enough about them.
I almost feel like when I hear that to myself, I'm going, you're waiting for, like when you're in a relationship and you're waiting for the other shoe to drop. You're like waiting for something. That's what I'm thinking when you were saying that.
Exactly. How this can't last.
It's too good, can't last. Why is it happening to me? This can't be good. Stuff like that. I'm just thinking that when you're saying that.
Yeah, exactly. You can't trust that good things will happen to you. It leaves an impact. There's no question.
Do some people avoid dealing with this problem as they are an adult? They don't deal with it, and do they have like long-term health problems too, besides social anxiety?
Yeah, certainly a lot of people. Oh, you should see when I'm trying to get my groups together. I always say it's like herding cats because they want to get help so badly, but it's so scary. You have to put yourself into a situation that's so frightening to you in order to get help. So yes, there's so much avoidance. But yes, it's been shown that they have a lot of gastrointestinal problems for one. That's the main physical symptom.
It's interesting too. As a parent, if I had my son was being bullied, how can I approach him and help him deal with it? I know that you told the story about your son, but I was wondering if you may have some other ideas or maybe tips.
Yeah, for sure. First of all, they need to find someone that they can talk to, and hopefully it's you, because so many parents, I don't know, they're just not there when their kid wants to talk about it. And the kids are ashamed. Remember, shame is such an important part of this. If a child feels like their parent either would find them lacking because they're being bullied, or that they're just not interested enough to hear about it, or they would blame the child in some way, then they're not going to talk to their parent. So if parents can be open to hearing about it and commiserating with how painful it is, because it is definitely painful to be ostracized by the kids in your grade. It's the worst thing. Actually, I say it's the worst thing. And research shows that when kids are asked whether they most fear happening at school, it's being bullied more than anything else. So it's really important. Okay, tell someone. If you want them to tell you, first of all, you want to help them fake it till they make it, like we said. Help them get involved in other activities where they can meet other friends, where they can be distracted by other things. Help them to use humor if they can, but that's another one that's tough. A couple of the people that I wrote about, George Clooney, that's how he ended up dealing with his bullying. And so did, I guess it was Shaquille O'Neal. Yeah, he was bullied. He was called Sasquatch and all kinds of things. And then he started using humor, and that's what got him through. Another thing that a couple of the celebrities talked about doing was that they would surprise their bully with kindness. If bully says, oh, your shoes are ugly, you could say, oh, I really like your shoes. Just anything that will surprise the bully will help. You can help them if they're in if someone is saying something mean to them, to visualize a really relaxing place that they like to be. So take their mind away from what's being said, or visualize the face of their parent. Those are some of the things that some of the celebrities talked about, and the things that, of course, I've come across in my professional career.
What are some? I was curious. Like some of the celebrities, you mentioned George Clooney, you mentioned Shaquille O'Neal. I know that I remember seeing the picture of The Rock when he was a teenager. You mentioned him in your book too, and he must have gone through some interesting bullying when he was a kid.
Yeah. He called himself, he said he looked like a mutant teenager. And he talked about having somebody beat him up or punch him, and he ran away, and his mother told him that he had to go back and face him. So that was interesting. So many people you wouldn't expect. And sometimes I think it really helps parents who might be feeling ashamed themselves, right? Their kid is being bullied, they might feel ashamed. What's wrong with me that my kid is being bullied? So I think it helps parents to know that there are so many of these professional athletes and entertainers that were bullied. And that's my whole point here, right? To normalize this. But for instance, I'll give you some names. Drew Brees. Drew Brees was bullied because he had a birthmark on his face. And the kids would call him Spot and tell him to wipe that thing off his face. Okay. Tiger Woods was tied to a tree by kids on the first day of school. Who else? David Beckham was teased a lot because he wouldn't go out on the weekends. He just wanted to practice. Muhammad Ali was bullied, believe it or not. Kobe Bryant was teased for having skinny legs and called Kermit the Frog. Tom Brady was stuffed in a locker.
I'm sorry, I shouldn't laugh at that. Now I wouldn't stop in a locker, but back then I remember seeing his pictures when he got drafted. Yeah, I can, but still, that's not good.
Not good. Yeah. And there isn't a sport really that you can think of where there hasn't been some well-known athlete who hasn't talked about being bullied in some way. And of course, then all the other kinds of celebrities. Taylor Swift and was bullied for liking country music, believe it or not. And she would go home and she would write her songs, and so she attributes the bullying to, or if it's success as a songwriter, partially to bullying. Harrison Ford was pushed down this hill at school every day at recess. I could just go on and on, just people that you wouldn't expect. I'll tell you an interesting story I thought about Tiger Woods is that he was teased for his stutter and for being biracial. And so what his father would do would be, when he was practicing, when he was a boy, he would yell insulting things at him, at Tiger. And he would do it over and over until finally Tiger got to the point where he doesn't even notice because he says people still do that, but he doesn't even notice it anymore because he just got so accustomed to it from his father kind of role playing that with him.
It's interesting too. I was thinking about another situation, like I mentioned before, that I've gone through bullying during my life. And one of the things that I was called, my nickname was Egg, because my head was shaped as an egg. So they call me Eggy, Eggster. And I used to absolutely hate that. I got angry about it. But again, the best way to handle it is just go, hey, my head's shaped as an egg, like you said. And I just accepted it. And once I made jokes about it, I diffused it. And I remember going to the military, even the drill sergeant made fun of my head. And because so
really?
If the drill sergeant called me, go, hey, private, shake your head, shake, rattle, and roll. And I'm like, I did it because I didn't bother me then. I just wanted to be left alone. But I remember, I can see some of the similarities, what you're talking about from my life experience. So I hope it helps me as a parent if my son goes through the same stuff I went through.
Exactly. You know that, and that compassion will help so much. They need to have somebody who, like I said, who listens to them. And the thing about it is, I don't know if the fact that your head was shaped like an egg aren't a lot of people, but that's the point. You can get bullied for everything. I have a list of about 50 things in the book that people were bullied for. But I think the most important message I'd like to convey is that the things that you get bullied for as a kid can often become the things that make you special as an adult. And so many of these people, like I said, Taylor Swift, she became obviously a well-known songwriter. And Elon Musk had no friends. He was once hospitalized because he was bullied so badly, but that left him time to play video games and read science fiction, and now he is who he is. So Michael Phelps was teased for his long arms, and now and he became an Olympic swimmer. So that it goes on and on. The things that you think you're ashamed of when you're a kid really can become the things that make you special.
Interesting too, and I always wanted to ask this question in the sense that what's the fine line? Because as an adult, the experience of being bullied as a child, as an adult, I can handle different situations now because of my experience. I don't know. It sounds weird, but I can handle it as an adult now. That when some people can't handle it because they never experienced that. I'm just wondering what your thoughts about that.
Oh my gosh, you're absolutely right. There are three things I think that I can think of that these celebrities talked about as being the silver line of being bullied. One of them is that it toughened them up to deal with difficulty later. So you're talking exactly. And then they're also saying that it made them success much more important to them to show the bullies that they could make it in this world. And then also some of them said that they became more empathic. And that's what you're talking about, I think, as well with your son. You can have empathy for your son or daughter if they're being bullied, if you were bullied. So those are some of the silver linings of being bullied as a kid. But
especially like a lot of like now with the homeschooling and stuff too, and really important for kids to have that social interaction. And now being home and isolated all the time must have been really tough, especially with the kids when they're developing their social skills and stuff.
For sure. And of course, that brings in the cyberbullying.
Oh, yes.
Which has been a problem, although there's still more of it in school apparently than online, in person than online. But it's tough. It's really tough. And it just doesn't seem to go away, the bullying. And that's why I really focus on helping these kids maintain their self-esteem if they're going to have to be bullied. But I love the fact that you could use humor. Like you said, that's tough to do. Acting confident or making jokes or seeing the humor in it is really tough. And you did that. So,
well, it's not easy. It's not an easy, but it's a learned experience. But I try to explain to my son now because everything's digital and stuff like that. He's 9. He's third grader, be fourth grade in a couple months. And I didn't have that when I was growing up. I didn't have that. When I got bullied at school, I went home and it didn't follow me home. And the kids nowadays, they don't have it easy because it's always on.
Yeah, you're right. Yes. Terrible. And these girls get bullied differently from boys, right? Girls have social bullying, and that really cyberbullying, being on the internet, and all really lends itself to that. You can spread these rumors about the girls and say mean things and be anonymous. So it's tough.
I have a lot of empathy for my son, and I will be there for him, but I don't want to be a kid and I would not want to be a kid growing up nowadays when it comes to that stuff.
No, it was tough back when you were doing it, and it's tough now.
I was wondering what feedback you got in your book. Anybody reached out and any feedback about your book?
Not yet. It's relatively new. I just put it on Amazon like a month ago, I guess it was. No. It's funny, when I started to write this book 20 years ago.
Oh, wow.
And what I did then was I just sent out umpteen letters to people. I didn't even do email at that point, to celebrities, asking them if they were bullied, would they write about it? Would they write something about it? And not one person wrote back to me except a Dallas Cowboy football player, Moose Johnston.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was so nice. He wrote back a whole thing about what had happened to him. I guess he was really sensitive as a kid, and he would cry after games if he lost, and none of the other kids really cared. And so they would make fun of him for crying. So he wrote a whole thing about what had happened to him and what he thought kids should do. And so I feel very grateful, because that really kept me interested in the project. And so then I started just researching what I read about celebrities being bullied, and I came up with enough to fill a whole book and more, really.
So it's been a really amazing journey for you for writing this book?
Yeah, it's taken a long time, but I feel so good about helping these kids one by one. Every time I sell a book, I think maybe one kid will feel empowered and feel less ashamed of being bullied. So,
Well, wrapping up, I want to final thoughts. Anything you want to leave with the audience about bullying or anything we might not have touched upon?
well, just again, the messages that that came across so clearly when I read about these celebrities, the one about the fact that this could end up being your special talent. Also, don't believe everything people say. Like Justin Timberlake was told he was a terrible singer, and Lady Gaga had a group make a Facebook that said you'll never be famous. So don't believe what you hear. And again, the silver lining that comes from being bullied, and what you were talking about, the fact that it can make you more resilient later in life. So hang in there. There is life after bullying. That's a very important message. There's life after bullying.
Where they connect you when they reach out and ask more questions or more about your book?
I'm sorry?
Where can they reach out and connect with you, ask questions, or reach out more about your book?
Yeah. I have a website for the book that's called From Loser to Legend book.com. And then my personal work email is patricia.l.stahl@gmail.com.
Thank you, Patricia. Thank you much for being on the podcast this evening. I really appreciate it. And it's a very important topic that can really help parents and bullying and help with the topic about bullying. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you for talking, Joe. Appreciate you having me on.
That's going to do it for today's episode of the No Sitting on the Sideline Dad podcast. A big thanks to Patricia for sharing her time and her heart and her wisdom. And also a big thanks to you, too. If you want to learn more or check out her book, head over to FromLosersToLegendsBook.com. It's powerful stuff. Before wrapping up, let me leave you with this. One small way you can show up for your kids this week. One moment, one hug, one check-in. Because those little things matter. They turn into big memories. If this episode meant something to you, shoot me a message at joe@nosittingonthesideline.com or come over and visit the website, nosittingonthesideline.com/158. That's the episode number. I'd love to hear from you. Also, until next time, take care of yourself, give your kids a hug. God bless. See ya.